rise and shine. 6 a.m. and your hand can't make it to the alarm clock before the voices in your head start telling you that it's too early, too dark, and too cold to get out of bed. Aching muscles lie still in rebellion, pretending not to hear your brain commanding them to move. A legion of voices are shouting their unanimous permission for you to hit the snooze button and go back to dreamland. But you didn't ask their opinion. The voice you've chosen to listen to is one of defiance, a voice that says there was a reason you set that alarm in the first place. So sit up, put your feet on the floor, and don't look back, because we've got work to do. Welcome to the grind. For what is each day but a series of conflicts between the right way and the easy way? 10,000 streams fan out like a river delta before you, each one promising the path of least resistance. Thing is, you're headed upstream. And when you make that choice, when you decide to turn your back on what's comfortable and safe and what some would call common sense, well, that's day one. From there, it only gets tougher. So just make sure this is something you want, because the easy way out will always be there, ready to wash you away. All you have to do is pick up your feet. But you aren't going to, are you? With each step comes the decision to take another. You're on your way now, but this is no time to dwell on how far you've come. You're in a fight against an opponent you can't see, but oh, you can feel him on your heels, can't you? Feel him breathing down your neck. You know what that is? That's you. Your fears, your doubts, and insecurities all lined up like a firing squad, ready to shoot you out of the sky. But don't lose heart. While they're not easily defeated, they are far from invincible. Remember, this is the grind, the battle royale between you and your mind, your body, and the devil on your shoulder who's telling you that this is just a game. This is just a waste of time. Your opponents are stronger than you. Drown out the voice of uncertainty with the sound of your own heartbeat. Burn away your self-doubt with a fire lit beneath you. Remember what we're fighting for, and never forget that momentum is a cruel mistress. She can turn on a dime with the smallest mistake. She is ever searching for the weak place in your armor, that one tiny thing you forgot to prepare for. So as long as the devil is hiding the details, the question remains, is that all you got? Are you sure? And when the answer is yes, when you've done all you can to prepare yourself for battle, then it's time to go forth and boldly face your enemy, the enemy within. Only now you must take that fight into the open, into hostile territory. You're a lion in a field of lions, all hunting the same elusive prey with a desperate starvation that says victory is the only thing that can keep you alive. So believe that voice that says you can run a little faster, and you can throw a little harder, and that for you, the laws of physics are merely a suggestion. Luck is the last dying wish of those who want to believe that winning can happen by accident. Sweat, on the other hand, is for those who know it's a choice. So decide now, because destiny waits for no man. And when your time comes and 1,000 different voices are trying to tell you you're not ready for it, listen instead to that lone voice of dissent. The one that says you are ready, you are prepared. It's all up to you now. So rise and shine.
Everybody up. Welcome to Cold War Radio Live, ladies and gentlemen, from our home base, WAAR. We are America Radio, your number one source for government and political talk anywhere, coming to you from the Steel City Resistance Studio in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in the broadcast bunker. And ladies and gentlemen, from Ice Station North Studio somewhere on the vast Norwegian Sea, come in, Radio Norway.
Good evening, America. Good evening to our lovely audience, and good evening to our Spreaker chat room, and good evening to you, Mr. Hutch Bailey Jr. I just got out of bed to to get ready for this show, but I'm a good sport, so let's see how it fares.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on board. This is a makeup episode, and Stacy couldn't come on tonight, and I appreciate you coming to the studio, sir. I do. I had to give the audience 3 a week. I had an engagement yesterday. We'll see how many people got the word about tonight's show. It looks pretty good. I had an Army buddy stop by from out of town, and I had to see him. You got to have priorities sometimes.
Absolutely. Please
follow me on Spreaker, ladies and gentlemen. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. You can catch the show on your Roku via Blueberry, or you can catch it on YouTube or the 405media.com, iHeartRadio, or get the Cold War Radio app free in your app store if you're just joining the program. The email is hutch@steelcityresistance.com. The Cold War Radio patron hotline is 412-567-1460. The chat room is up on Spreaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to steelcityresistance.com where you can get the show notes links in their entirety. For those of you that are new to the show, we have much more material than we have time for. So there is an assembled plethora of information in the show notes and also in the research room. The research room is a dedicated place for you to get resources if you need to debate someone or you just want to know a little bit more about some subjects yourself. Also, please become a Cold War Radio patron. We've got about, I think it's 18 or 19 listeners are carrying the show, ladies and gentlemen, so we need a little help there. If you're intimidated by a monthly pledge, you can go to the website and you can donate one time. In there's buttons for both. If you want to send mail, it's Hutch Bailey Jr., P.O. Box 96022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 15226. Cold War Radio. Norway, I don't think there's ever been an administration in American history that has been so beat up by the opposition and even on people on their own side than this one. I mean, you had a Navy admiral that served in the White House, the most intimate contact possible between a doctor and a patient for President Obama and his family, and there was no problem. And then the Trump family, and no problem. And then they try to fix the VA, and they came down on this guy like a ton of bricks. It was absolutely embarrassing. And I'm sure you're going to find out none of it happened, except for, I mean, they brought something up that everybody knew happened anyway when they were passing sleeping pills out. They do that all throughout Washington. Even the journalists said that they did it. And to have that guy run through the mud like that's just unprofessional to me.
Absolutely. This is a raw deal, and when something like this happens, I always ask myself, what do they got to hide? What would this Admiral Ronnie Jackson, what would he have dug up that they don't want to see dug up? And well, it's the VA. We know there's a lot of skeletons in the closets in regards to the VA. So I don't know if they if that was the motive to attack the admiral, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it's absolutely incredulous how this administration has been attacked, and I saw the other day, I think it was President Trump that mentioned it on Fox News, that only the confirmation hearings. I mean, here you have, and you said our side is attacking the administration, but I would argue that this isn't our side, because if you're on our side, you're with the president, you're with America, you want to make America great again. But what we see here is a total erosion of the Trump administration. And President Trump said that with this pace of the Senate, it would take 9 years, folks, to have all his candidates for various positions confirmed by the Senate. It's a disgrace. It's a disaster for America.
Yeah, and you make a good point about not being on our side. I meant Republicans is what I meant, but you're absolutely right on catching that. They're not on our side. And you know, I think what it could be, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, the labor union movement, the leftist labor union movement in the United States has shifted almost exclusively from the private sector to the public sector. And the VA is one of the biggest employers in the country. I mean, it's a behemoth. There's more than one VA. There's the health care part of it. There's the benefits part of it. I mean, it's a three-headed giant, and it's staffed by SEIU, the purple monster. So it might have to do with that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to guess that they probably knew that he would go over there and clean that up. But anyway, somebody will. I mean, the thing about it is they're not going to stop us unless we let them. That's why I played that theme song today, because that's what this program is about tonight. I mean, this is about, we got a fight on our hands, and we need to stand up to it. Another area, well, let's talk about this first. We can't have a show called Cold War Radio and not talk about Korea. Already, even if nothing else happens, we've already crossed horizons that we've never done before. The North Koreans have never walked into South Korea before yesterday, whatever it was. The South has gone to the North, but never has the North come to the South, and they did that. And that's to Pompeo and Trump and China. You have to. The silent partner here is China. I mean, there is a nuclear test site in a mountain on the border of China that has had a major disaster happen in it. And there's people thinking that maybe radiation is leaking out. And I think that the North Korea has been pushed into this because we got to get this thing cleaned up. But we'll find out in the future. But I'm really proud of the president, Norway. I really am.
Absolutely. I mean, this is. I would say this is in the same caliber as Reagan's famous sentence, "Tear down this wall," and we saw the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain fall. I would say that this handshake, this historic handshake today across the border with the North Korean and the South Korean presidents, that is in the same category. And this is really a big historic moment. 70 years we've seen this travesty go on, and now we have a glimmer of hope. And it's all down to President Trump. I would say, I would be so bold as to say it's all down to President Trump, because without his marble balls and his determination to solve this problem, we would never have been today where we are.
No, I agree. And some of the things that he's done in the past, specifically in Syria, when I talked about this with Ambassador Bolton at CPAC, Secretary Bolton now, I guess. But we talked about Russian mercenaries being killed when they were threatening the United States military. And a lot of people are crediting that because it came out today that Mattis gave the order when he found out that they weren't. I spoke before in a previous episode about there being geographical boundaries between the Russian military and the U.S. military that we both said we're not going to cross because we do not want direct confrontation between, I keep wanting to say Soviet, between Russian soldiers and American soldiers. So there's a line there. There's like a DMZ there. And when Mattis found out that these Russian military mercenaries were on our side of that line, he gave the order to annihilate them. And reports from the Russian mercenaries, they said that they verified that they beat us like dogs, is what the Russians said. And I've heard that had some influence on Kim Jong-un also. But we'll find out. It's going to be wonderful to watch. Now, the Democrats are acting ridiculous. We've got two of the best secretaries in the cabinet, Mick Mulvaney and Scott Pruitt at EPA. Pruitt is redoing the EPA the way it should be. That was one of the most corrupt organizations in the United States government, and there's a lot of bodies out there to prove it. A lot of people that are bankrupt, a lot of people that lost their businesses, lost everything. Some people that are in prison because of that communist organization, and he's cleaning it right up. And the Democrats are going crazy. I mean, this guy, they're scrutinizing his rent. They're scrutinizing raises that went out to top employees that were done by his chief of staff. He didn't even do it. But I want you to listen to the tone of voice in the MSNBC commentator and in the senator, in Barbara Boxer's voice when they talk about this. No, not Barbara Boxer, Democrat Senator Gillibrand. The way they act with this, it's just they're not professional at all. They're going down. Their constituency is so, I don't want to say dumb, but how else would you put up with this? Listen.
Embattled EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt today admitted he lied when he claimed earlier this month he had just found out about improper raises for two of his favorite aides. Facing a grilling on Capitol Hill, Pruitt, testifying under oath, admitted he'd known about one of the raises in advance. But he was defiant when pressed on his myriad scandals, blaming his aides and insisting that reports of his misconduct, which have led to at least 10, count them 10, federal investigations, were drummed up by his political enemies. Joining me now, Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, a member of the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. And Senator, I guess I should start with this. Were you at all assuaged or convinced of the forthrightness of Scott Pruitt during his performance today in the House?
I didn't see his performance, but I have deep concerns about Scott Pruitt, and I think he should resign, given all the allegations against him for taking a rental apartment from someone lobbying him, from the issue of raises to all the other scandals that he's brought forth. Also, just his record. I mean, when he was Attorney General of Oklahoma, he sued the EPA on behalf of polluters as opposed to helping his state and protecting the well-being of families. And all he's done since he's been EPA administrator is roll back protections for clean air and clean water. So given where he is right now, I wish he would step down.
Polluters, just for the audience, if there's any Democrats listening, polluters, that means American businesses. Sometimes you have to translate these leftists. She didn't even watch the testimony, and they called her to comment on the testimony.
Unbelievable. And I mean, I'm totally behind you in everything you said about this. And Scott Pruitt is a giant, and I think he's going to clean up the EPA completely. And I mean, the EPA has been really a powerhouse to further the socialist slash communist cause in America, and the way the EPA has exceeded their mandate in taxing American businesses has been detrimental to the growth of American business. And thank God that President Trump became aware of this and did something about it. And I think we can expect great things from the EPA. I mean, after all, they're there to protect the environment, not to fill the coffers of socialists.
Exactly. And Brett Baer has a very good documentary on it that points out the different areas that are authoritarian, socialist, and communist. I'm not using that lightly. That's real.
Absolutely.
And nobody wants to blow up the environment. I mean, we live here too, folks, you know. But anyway, it's just it gets old. And Mulvaney, I think he's at Treasury, right? He's doing well too. I mean, they're all doing well except for Sessions. But we'll talk about that some other day. Now, Barbara Boxer from California had some comments about Fox News, Fox and Friends, rather, because Fox and Friends is where the president likes to communicate. And Kellyanne Conway even said that he might start calling in once a month just to use that conduit to get things out other than Twitter. But you got to hear this Congresswoman. I mean, the senator, rather. These people, whenever they hear anything, they can't debate on the issues. I mean, the deflection and the putting people down instead of answering questions or explaining your position, it's maddening.
Senator Boxer, do you think your former colleagues in the Senate watch this sort of thing, and what goes through their head?
Well, I watched it, and I'll tell you what went through my head. I think Fox and Friends should give up doing their version of the news, and instead they should become online therapists. It's perfect. They can have people call in who are narcissistic, paranoid, upset, frustrated, and angry, and they'll do better at that. This was incredible, and in all seriousness, they looked so uncomfortable. And I've never been on a news show when the person like you would say, "You must be so busy." Bye. Usually they say, "We're running out of time. We've really enjoyed, your thank you very much." They said, you must be so busy. He could have stayed on there all day, rambling, undermining his own attorneys by saying that Cohn was hardly even his attorney, that he knew about Stormy Daniels, and on and on.
You notice the chummy demeanor in both of those clips between the politician and the quote-unquote media.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, the media today, American media, American mainstream media, as it is in Europe, it's just the propaganda arm of the so-called Democratic Party.
And 100% now, too. It's not even, it doesn't lean left anymore. It is part of the party.
Absolutely.
You are listening to Cold War Radio.
All right, now we got to get down to a real threat. And this is brought by Jeffrey Folks, who was born and raised in a communist country and from the American Thinker. And this is entitled, How Millennial Socialists Endanger America. And when I read this, Norway, it scared me. It really did. When you start looking at the numbers, and I'm not going to get into the economic numbers as much, but I want to lay this out a little bit. Millennials, and that's those that are born between 1982 and 2004, are the largest age cohort in American history. And according to a recent poll, most of them, 44%, prefer socialism to capitalism, 42%. An earlier 2015 poll found an even larger number of millennials, 53%, with a favorable opinion of socialism. Inference, America is in trouble. Maybe Donald Trump can stem the tide for another 4 or maybe even 8 years. But support for socialism will continue to mount as long as millennials remain ignorant of what socialism really is. The greatest danger to this country comes from the fact that so many millennials don't understand politics and economics. And I don't know if you noticed my timeline, but I actually started this show because of this. That was the whole reason I started this show, when I saw a Latina United States Army sergeant in her off time wearing a Che Guevara T-shirt. And we were deployed overseas. And ever since then, I said, I got to do my best. We got to educate these people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it beggars belief that you see an American soldier on duty. And you said it was in theater as well in Iraq. Touting an icon for communism.
And the thing is I didn't doubt her patriotism. She's just stupid. You know what I mean? I don't think she was a communist. I just think she was wearing the shirt because she doesn't know what it is, in my opinion. And I think there's millions like that.
Possibly, but still, well, I've said it many times. You have said it many times on this show. There is a ticking time bomb in American education. I mean, people are deliberately being brainwashed and being dumbed down and being force-fed propaganda, which they, because of the lack of education, they cannot distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. And then perhaps she was a patriot, and this was just a reflection of that. But oh boy,
I know.
When you tout Che Guevara and communism like that, you gotta have some sense about what this is really all about.
And how else to explain millennial support for Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist with a 75% approval rating overall and higher among millennials? Sanders is the most popular politician in the country, according to The Observer. According to his official website, Sanders supports a long list of liberal causes: free health care and college tuition for all, combating climate change to save the planet, fighting for women's rights, fighting for LGBT equality, fighting for nurses, empowering tribal nations, fighting for the rights of native Hawaiians, standing with Guam. All of it paid for by making the wealthy pay their fair share. And it seems that Bernie is fighting for just about everybody except straight white males and that nebulous crowd he calls the rich. And straight white males are a huge part of his constituency. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the way that I like to try to do it, Norway, is I try to take things that are real, that are happening, like Venezuela. When you look at the pictures of the dogs in Venezuela, because these millennials are all about the heartstrings. You look at the pictures of the dogs with their ribs sticking out because their masters don't have any food to feed them anymore.
Yeah, well, when there are dogs, because the Venezuelans, they're eating their dogs now. They're eating rats, they're eating pigeons, anything they can get their hands on.
Absolutely, and this is what you have to show them. As a matter of fact, these people are for 100% free health care for everybody, and we all know what happens with free health care. Let's listen to Dana Loesch about the National Health Service in England and what's going on there.
Also, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about this case over in Great Britain. Alfie Evans, the little boy who is clinging to life. The courts over there said that the National Health Service could disconnect him from any sort of oxygen. He was expected to die immediately. But he didn't. And his parents have been in the room giving him mouth-to-mouth to keep him alive. They simply wanted the opportunity to be able to take this little boy to Italy where they would care for him. But the National Health Service there said no.
This story breaks my heart, and you see your kids in everybody else's kids, and so I see my boys in this little boy, and it's amazing that you have a tale of two Kates. You have the Duchess of Cambridge, who just the other day just welcomed a baby boy, and then you have this mom, Kate James, who has a toddler who is in Alderhay Hospital, and they have very different stories. Can you imagine if this was the Duchess of Cambridge's son? I think the outcome would be very different. There's two things involved here. First off, people in Britain are not free. They're subjects. And when you are a subject, you lose all autonomy. These parents are not even, they want to have their son transferred to an Italian hospital, the Vatican Children's Hospital. It's already covered by private donations. It costs the NHS nothing but pride. This is all about ego for the socialist healthcare system in Britain. And it is absolutely monstrous that a country could murder a child as opposed to allowing their parents, no expense to NHS, to take this child somewhere else to receive treatment. And they even were blocking, with using apparently security in the room, they were blocking the parents from giving this child, once he was pulled from his ventilator, giving him any kind of nourishment or water whatsoever. Doctors said that he was going to die the moment the ventilator was removed. And they were wrong. And they've been wrong about a lot of things, and they're wrong about how they're treating this family, or how they're treating this family.
Why wouldn't they give this kid a shot? You look at these images, and it breaks your heart. Even if you're not a parent, I cannot imagine. I have a 2-year-old. That's how old this toddler is. Why wouldn't they give him a chance?
What's going on in Britain is what we had before the current administration took office. Because remember, President Trump rolled back a number of elements that, with regards to Obamacare, including that Independent Payment Advisory Board, that IPAD board, which is very similar to what Britain has, where you have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats who determine whether or not your life is worthy of treatment. We were so close, and I hope everyone realizes this, we were so close to having this here in the United States. But if right now, if Britain allows this child to go elsewhere, it's egg on their face, and then they're going to have to explain to other parents and other family members why they can't do the same with their children and their loved ones. This is monstrous. This country is committing murder. I hope the Pope gets involved. I hope the Queen says something to the petition, because if they kill this child, the sun has set on the Empire of Britain completely.
And that baby is just one of 6 that's on that list. And remember what the left did when Sarah Palin brought up the death panels, which is what the IPAB is. They savaged her.
Exactly.
So that's socialism, ladies and gentlemen, right there. If you have any millennials that are Bernie Sanders supporters, make them listen to that.
That is socialism, and Just 3 days ago, the Merseyside Police Department issued a statement to make people aware that social media posts, which are being posted in relation to Alder Hey and the Alfie Evans situation, they are being monitored and may be acted upon. There you have it. It's like a bad 1984 dystopian novel.
It is. One thing right after the other. Well, I'm not afraid. I'm posting, and if they want to shadow ban me or do whatever they want, freedom of speech isn't all the way dead here yet. But we better pay attention or it's going to be. It is in Europe, not just England, in Europe.
Absolutely.
People go to jail for it even, especially if you talk about Islam.
Absolutely, and I mean the police in Britain. It's gone completely rotten. I mean they are hunting down people for expressing negative opinions about an ideology, namely Islam. People go to jail for that. I mean, when members of parliament are arrested on the street for quoting Winston Churchill. That's how bad it's gotten to in England. Something is really rotten there.
Now, if you think these socialists are all about the masses and everything like that, and everybody wearing Mao suits and everything, Sanders intends to use the tax code to force the rich to pay more. Oddly enough, Sanders himself is one of these nefarious rich people. His net income in 2016 was over $1 million on a $186,000 salary, by the way. Nothing in the tax code prevents any taxpayer from contributing more than their required amount of tax to the federal government. So far as I know, Bernie has not done so. So it would seem that he doesn't mean it when he talks about the rich paying more, or he would have done so. Maybe Bernie is just a clever capitalist who, along with Nancy Pelosi with her $140 million and financier husband, masquerades as a socialist. At its heart, capitalism is a liberating philosophy of life whereby individuals participate freely in markets by trading their goods or services for those of others. And we have to teach these misguided, brainwashed kids, and some of them are adults, that they're absolutely nuts when they talk about capitalism the way they do.
Absolutely. And I watched quite a brilliant episode by Dennis Prager a few months back, where he compared socialism or communism with Nazism. And I mean, communism, socialism, it's practically the same blend. And he wondered why is communism so much more popular than Nazism? And the only explanation he came up with is that they use nicer sounding names for their theories. And I believe actually he's onto something there, because I mean, when you listen to the list that Bernie Sanders has here, I mean, doesn't it sound fine to fight for women? Of course it does. No. But it's all just a nice wrapping on a really, really bad idea.
And I'm going to stick on this subject just for a little bit longer. It's something's going to give at the end, but that's all right. That's why I put them in the order that they're in. But according to Pew Research, millennials tilt Democratic by 51 to 35%. Interestingly, their grandparents, the silent generation, aged 69 to 86, have now abandoned the Democrat Party in large numbers. These voters contributed to Trump's victory in 2016. What does the silent generation know that millennials don't? To begin with, they know that the world is a dangerous place. They grew up in the shadow of World War II and lived through the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Cold War. They lived with the fear of all-out nuclear war, with reports of Soviet spying and the horrors of Chinese and North Korean communism. They learned of gulags, executions, and starvation, and they knew how fortunate they were to have been born in America. They also know how difficult it is to maintain a decent standard of living. In their childhood, they heard tales of the Great Depression. They grew up at a time when the minimum wage was 75 cents an hour. That's an hour of real labor. not chatting or surfing on the internet. They built wealth patiently from small beginnings via a 30-year mortgage, Social Security, and contributions to retirement plans. They knew how hard it was to put money away. The silent generation's hard knocks wisdom is a long way from the smug assurance of those who have never lived without Wi-Fi. I don't wish ill on anyone, but I know that a time of testing is at hand for millennials. With more than $21 trillion in debt, America is moving toward a debased currency and a permanently lower standard of living. And despite the assurances of millennial historians such as Yuval Noah Harari, war is not really a thing of the past. Another great war is coming, one America may well lose. I doubt if our adversaries will be as magnanimous as America was following World War II. But Norway millennials seem willfully blind to these possibilities. Millennials as a group have lost sight of a fundamental law underlying all civilization. Call it self-preservation, self-interest, or simply survival. It was the great truth that Churchill cited when he rallied Britain to defense in 1940. It is what George S. Patton meant when he said the object of war is not to die for your country, but to make the other bastard die for his. Most millennials, I suspect, are not great Patton fans. They can't understand the wisdom underlying his salty language or his heroic life. They can't appreciate Patton because they don't accept the life that involves struggle. And since that truth is at the heart of capitalistic economic theory, they don't understand or accept capitalism.
Absolutely. And socialism obscures that truth, and it does so in the service of the selfish ends of both the ruling elite and the dissolute masses. It is founded on the lie that the human species can live everywhere in peace, accepting the rule of distant bureaucracies and subsisting on an equal dole of crumbs. And I think this article is brilliant. It is really a bullseye in my opinion, because this is what is at heart of what we're doing here with Cold War Radio. This is really the essence of it all, namely that we are sitting on a ticking time bomb, the millennial education or lack of education. And it's going to become apparent pretty soon. I believe that's already what we're seeing in media, in the way social media is being controlled, and in the way the resistance, as they call it, is working. They simply don't understand basic economics like a market economic capitalist economy versus the socialist/communist model. And yeah,
I agree, and I think that that's pretty much our mission. You're right, and I would pray. First of all, I cherry picked that article, so if you want to read a lot more of that type of information, it's in the show notes links. This is Cold War Radio 596, but that's our mission, and I hope the audience, if you get a chance and you have grandkids or kids or neighbors or whatever, talk to them. It's not that they're bad or that they're wrong. They've been brainwashed. And we have the antidote. Each one of us has the antidote. And that's the truth. It's the truth. It's the wisdom of a life lived. I mean, there is a lot to be said for our generation and all the experiences we have. It's that simple. Just if you're a grandparent that are older than me and Hutch, you've seen a lot of what made America great in the maybe you've even experienced the Second World War, but in the post-war era, and you've seen the threat, you've seen the gulags, you've seen the Berlin Wall go up to not to protect the communists in East Germany from the West, but simply to keep people inside East Germany. Absolutely, no question about it. Cambodia, I mean, Rwanda, they're all over. Now, this next portion of the program. This guy, I can't stand James Clapper and Brennan. These two guys, they ought to be thrown under the jail. But a report was released by congressional Republicans on Friday, and I'm going to, in it, the report published by the GOP side of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence shows that Clapper acknowledged speaking with Jake Tapper of CNN about the dossier while he was still the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. Now, I want you to listen to him talking to CNN a while ago before this report came out.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about these reports out of conservative media about the president, that you leaked that the president had been briefed on the dossier. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, I had a little trouble figuring it out, frankly. It's a little nonsensical to me. What happened here, just the sequence of events, was on the 6th of January is when the four of us, was Director Brennan, then the Director of CIA, Director Comey, then Director of the FBI, Admiral Mike Rogers, who's still Director of NSA, and I went to Trump Tower to brief the President-elect on our findings in the intelligence community assessment, which we then put out publicly that afternoon. The following Tuesday, the 10th, the President-elect a news conference in which he berated the intelligence community as Nazis for putting out or issuing this dossier, which we didn't. It's absurd. We didn't do anything of the kind. It was already out there. It wasn't an intelligence document. It was already held by the media, and I didn't have any contact with media until after I left the government on the 20th of January. So I don't quite understand, at least what I've read, that somehow I leaked about the dossier.
So let me get. So you didn't leak anything about the dossier to any media?
No, not. I mean, I talked about it after I left the government, but not during that period. Not, and certainly not between the 6th of January and the 10th, when the president.
Well, you know, I guess. Yeah, get out of the pool.
Yeah,
man.
what can you say? I mean, I find it really, really scary to have had people like this
everywhere.
Everywhere. Well, he mentioned one of the worst.
Three of the strongest departments in the United States government were in that room. I mean, this guy, you know what he is now?
Yeah,
he's a national security analyst at CNN.
Yeah, exactly. And I think John Brennan is bucking for the same position at MSNBC. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And I mean, he drops this off to Tapper, and then CNN, if you remember with this dossier, BuzzFeed put it out. But then when this happened, CNN used that briefing as a hook to publish its story about the existence of the dossier, which included allegations that we all know about all that. But exactly. The report cited multiple U.S. officials as sources. I'm telling you, we are close to either crumbling or putting people in prison. It's got to be coming soon.
Yeah, it's either way. It's either putting people away for a really long time, or the system will crumble. I mean, the president will fall. That's the long and the short of it. And if I was Trump, I would do my damnedest to get rid of as much as possible of the unelected bureaucracy, because that is the other bomb. We've talked about the educational bomb, but the other bomb is bureaucracy gone haywire, deep state. Root it out. Start from scratch.
It certainly has. There's no question. I think another element of that is you got to have a heart-to-heart, face-to-face with Sessions. I mean, or get rid of him, one or the other. I mean,
get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean,
he's had his chance. I mean, January 2017 was when Trump was elected, and I mean, here we are. 462 days later, and Sessions has still not started working.
No, it's unacceptable. It really is. And I saw a testimony of his, and there was a congressman from West Virginia that was really, really hammering him. And he did say, to his credit, that this investigation has to come to an end. So maybe there's something going on that we don't know about, but I've been saying that for over a year, and I'm tired of saying it. Let's shift to the Middle East and Europe. Do you think Turkey is Erdogan's magic spell beginning to pale? The Gatestone Institute writes, research conducted in March by 50 teachers from the Imam Hatip schools revealed that students are moving away from Islam. Mosques no longer serve people, but rather serve as a source of income for certain people, young Imam later fired. Another cause of upset on the part of many religious Muslims is the content of the Diyanet-prepared Friday sermons, which frequently advocates violent jihad. You ever notice how all kinds of violent stuff happens Friday night?
It's no coincidence. It's the Friday sermons. I mean, we go to church on Sunday, and our pastor, our priest, preaches we should turn the other cheek and treat each other with kindness. But here you have Muslims going to the Friday sermons, and they come out screaming with fire bombs, and it's and this is really what's at the base of it all. In Christianity, we have the golden rule. I mean, do unto others. In Islam, they lack that rule. It's the complete reverse. It's pure evil. It's that simple.
And you look at the imams. Could you imagine your priest swinging around a samurai or a saber over his head? I mean, I've seen videos of that where he's preaching a sermon with a big saber. And the other thing, these mosques, there's 90,000 of them in Turkey. These mosques are military headquarters. That's where they get the bombs. I mean, it's unbelievable that we continue to goof around with this.
Absolutely. And Diyanet is actually, as far as I remember, the biggest Turkish bureaucracy. There is this Diyanet system of mosques, and the biggest expansion of the Diyanet mosques has been in Germany. And let me tell you this, Hutch, in Germany, the mosques are not empty like this article claims they are in Turkey.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, I think if Norway can stay, we might stay a couple extra minutes to get through these, but we're not going to be, you got to go to the show notes. I mean, it's the only way. That article's long, and they're all long, and we just don't have time. But
yes, go to steelcityresistance.com and find the show notes links.
Yeah, it's up in the pages. It's one of the pages. This is, again, CWR 596. Now, I heard something really good today. I never agreed with fighting a war, declaring a war against a tactic, especially when you don't even declare the war. Now, if we would have declared war against ISIS, I would have been all in for that if the Congress would have done it. But Mattis says the Pentagon is moving away from the war on terror to challenges by China and Russia. And what this means is we're going back to a more conventional base, which I think is highly necessary. This is from Breitbart and Edwin Mora from Washington, D.C. The Pentagon is moving away from the war on terror, choosing instead to primarily focus on deterring strategic competitors, China and Russia. U.S. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis stressed while testifying before a Senate panel yesterday. Mattis told the Senate Armed Services Committee via written testimony, the global situation is sobering. Russia is modernizing its full range of nuclear systems while espousing a theory of nuclear escalation in military conflict. China, too, is modernizing and expanding its already considerable nuclear forces, pursuing entirely new capabilities. China is also modernizing its conventional military forces to a degree that will challenge U.S. military superiority. Millennials, you better get on point. Have you noticed any of that, Norway, in your neck of the woods?
We have seen I would say, an explosive increase in the number of what I can only you don't get it on any of the civilian radars, so you don't know really where they're going. But I've seen an explosive increase in the number of what is assumed to be flights to cut the Russians off. You see the fighters taking off from the Bodø airstrip, often with drop tanks, going full afterburner across the Vesterålen Islands, where I have my other base, and heading out into the Norwegian Sea. Because the Russians are testing our borders, flying over our borders up in the Barents Sea. So I've seen a really strong increase in activity, and also in simulated dogfights. And you can only go a few years back, and you would see that we had practically no activity at all. I mean, the defense was pretty much down. So I would say that without having any hard statistics, I would say there's been a significant increase in the past couple of years.
No, I read that there was a massive military operation in Norway, exercises, not combat. But did they report that there, or was that just something that was for export?
No, well, we just had one. Fairly large exercise, 5,000 troops, and I believe that was a multinational one, and we're having another one in not that long a time. I don't exactly remember the days, but we usually feel that with an increase in military transports along the European road number 6, the E6, which is the main road through Norway. And you can see they're hauling tanks on trucks, and they're doing troop transports, etc. So we can definitely feel the uptick here, and of course we have all the choppers flying in and out the fjords, and the fighter jets flying topside. So yes, we feel the presence of the military very strongly in this area, because it's a geographical bottleneck of Norway.
Right. While recent events have given rise to a sense of positive movement, North Korea's nuclear provocations threaten regional and global peace and have garnered universal condemnation by the United Nations. Iran's nuclear ambitions also remain an unresolved concern. Globally, nuclear terrorism remains a tangible threat. Mattis testified alongside General Joseph Dunford Jr., the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In addition to China and Russia, the Pentagon identified Iran and North Korea as strategic competitors that threaten the United States. So it looks like we're getting back a little bit more to conventional strategy, rather.
Yeah, and it's necessary. I mean, we've seen some tremendous moves with Trump's North Korea policy, but I would say the biggest nut he has to crack during his presidency is Iran and the power projection they have through Syria and through the entire Middle East, and the escalation in tension you see in the Middle East between the Shiite Iranians, the 12ers Shiites on one side, and the Sunni Muslims on the other side, with Turkey bucking for some hegemony. Oh, terrible word. Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is reportedly taking back their nuclear deposits, which they paid Pakistan to produce. And the intention is most likely that they want to produce nuclear weapons in Saudi Arabia. So absolutely a situation we need to keep a close eye on. But I would say that I hope that that the American military also keeps an eye on the movement of terrorists, because you snuffed them out more or less in the Iraq-Syria theater, but they're still alive and kicking. And I think that they are going to fall back, regroup, and start up their activities within our borders.
Oh, I think there's sleepers here. I think there's sleepers here already. All over the place and well funded. Interestingly, something that you said, the 12ers. This is why I worry so much about Iran. The 12th Imam, the people that believe in the 12th Imam, and maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit. But what they believe is that for this to happen, we call it revelations, but theirs is the world has to be on fire for this to happen. And that's why I don't think there would be any hesitation whatsoever for them to unleash a nuclear storm, just so their 12th Imam could come back.
Right. Absolutely. The 12er sect or the 12er Shiites with their main focus area in Iran, they have this belief that their imam, which disappeared, I think it was maybe it was 600 years ago, 800 years ago, something like that. The Imam Mahdi, his return, he's gone into hiding. He's still alive. He just disappeared from the eyes of man, but he is going to show himself the day the world is on fire. And how do you set the world on fire? Well, you start a nuclear program. You build an arsenal, which I believe the Iranians are doing now. I believe from all the intelligence reports I've read, bits and pieces here and there, I believe they passed the zero breakout time sometimes in the beginning of 2017, and that they're now just bucking for time to build an arsenal so they themselves can put the world, set the world on fire, and thus bring about the reappearance of the 12th Imam, the Imam Mahdi.
And Ralph in the chat room put a good essay on that whole thing too. So that's what scares me about them. They want the world to be on fire, is my point. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on all this. I'm glad that General Mattis is kind of getting away from declaring war on a tactic. You know, I mean, the war on terror. What a loser. You know.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Had to go. The iPad had to go stupid at some point, and there it went.
There we go.
But anyway, California has got some things going on, and New York. Coming soon, mass exodus from New York and California due to high taxes. Imagine that. This is from the American Thinker and Rick Moran. Art Laffer and Stephen Moore have penned an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal that gauges the impact of the cap on state tax deductions in high-tax states. Their conclusions should frighten high-tax, big-spending liberals in blue states across the country. And just to paraphrase this, what's happening is there used to be a deduction at the federal level for state income taxes. And when they crafted the tax reform bill, they didn't make waivers for that. They said, no, it's gone. And rightly so, because why should a taxpayer in Montana have to subsidize California state government? So their taxes are higher, and people are leaving, and it's about time. I just hope one of the side effects of this, because people have been leaving California for Texas for years. The problem is they go to the cities, they go to Austin and other cities in Texas, and they bring their liberal politics with them.
Yeah, and this is. When I read this article, I immediately thought about who is John Galt. Do you know that sentence?
Ayn Rand, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Ayn Rand and in Atlas Shrugged, where the key man. She envisioned this as one single man that just walks off the job because he doesn't have any incentive anymore to keep society running. And so this manhunt starts trying to find John Galt. And what we see in California especially, but also New York, is that the drag on society, those who are only interested in filling their pockets with government subsidies and government money, they stay, while those who actually make those money in producing goods that can be exported, they're actually leaving. So this is really a game of who is left without a chair when the music stops. We talked about the millennials, how blind they are in our first story today, and this is really just an extension of that.
It is, and it's so bizarre and so obscene. I think in New York City, which has 10 million people, I think 40,000 of them are paying the bills. You know, the richest 40,000 are paying for New York City, and the rest of them are voting for them. And maybe it's 20,000. The article I read, it was cut in half in 10 years because they left. I mean, you look at most of your radio hosts. Glenn Beck left. Rush Limbaugh left years ago. They weren't putting up with it, and a smart person won't.
Absolutely. The smart persons, and they are actually the ones driving the industry. They've had enough, and they're leaving. They've plucked up their tent plugs and left. And I mean, it's a crazy idea that like Bernie Sanders. We talked about Bernie Sanders. He says, we'll just tax the richest percent or the richest 5% of the population. I mean, when you see what the richest 1%, what wealth they really have, because a lot of their wealth is at work in society. They've invested capital in industry and in shares. Their capital is at work. So there is really limited how much you can milk that cow. And when you remove their incentive to stay in a state or stay in the United States, they're leaving for other shores. They're actually taking their capital and their know-how with them, and the entire country is worse off.
Absolutely, and again, I would urge everybody to read the first article. It even goes into a lot of this about how when manufacturing occurs at home, when we put tariffs, for instance, on Korean washing machines, and the washing machines are built here because we can't compete with the low prices of the junk they put in here. When we manufacture washing machines, all that money is brought back here, and the people that are manufacturing the washing machines keep their money here too. So it's like a 2-for-1 thing. I don't like talking about economics because you lose ratings doing it, but if you want to read it.
Yeah, but I mean, this is basic economics. Everyone should know about this basic economics. And the way to make America great again is that you stop the import and you increase the export, because what you sell to others is what you make money on. I mean, if you have a city, everyone can't be a hairdresser in that city, you know. Everyone can't live of cutting each other's hair. You need some export in order to bring some income into the coffers of the state. And I believe that combined with the tax cuts and in my opinion, I think that the 2-for-1 rule that Trump so far has run out is the most important. For every new regulation, you have to remove at least 2. Well, he has actually removed 27 laws for every new law he has signed. So he's done a fantastic job. And I believe that is going to be as important as the tax cuts and maybe more, because that is hurting the bureaucracy. when bureaucracy doesn't have any rules to govern anymore, the function of the bureaucracy is lost, and you can fire them.
That's
that
right.
Simple.
And I mean, the EPA that we talked about earlier, the EPA was acting like an arm of Congress. They were legislating, and all these agencies do this via regulation. And these cabinet members are slashing the regulations left and right, and that's a good thing. I mean, obviously, we have to keep, like the Consumer Safety Board is still doing their job, but they're not playing favorites, and the EPA, they're slashing volumes of regulations there. Those regulations were draconian. Anyway, It's a Friday night, Norway. Any final comments before we wrap it up?
Oh, it's been a pleasure co-hosting with you again, Hutch. And although it was a little short notice, but we got through it pretty all right, I think.
How can people get in touch with you?
I am at Norway for Trump, and that's Norway 4 with the number 4. And what you hear playing in the background is Sons of Norway, or as we would say in Norwegian, Sønner av Norge.
Okay, well, that was Gary Owen, but we can make it Sons of Norway.
Okay.
There, it's Sons of Norway now.
There you go.
Hey, thanks for coming, Norway, at the last minute. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Makes it a lot easier. Also, to everybody listening live, I appreciate you coming out on a Friday night. Again, I had to take the night off yesterday, and it was a long night, man. Army buddies, that can get out of hand.
Sounds great. Well, we need nights like that once in a while.
That's true. Anyway, so thanks for listening live, or thanks for listening on the podcast at a later date. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, Berg's Eye View on Twitter. Thanks for coming. God bless.
God bless.